What we're going to do is we're going to start off standing with your plumb line, ear, shoulder, hip, knee, ankle, in a straight line, just like a plumber would ask, or check for that plumb line. That's what you're doing. You're going to start with the head nod going down. You do not collapse your chin on your collarbone. You're going to round your chest. So you're flexing your chest muscles, your pec muscles, to round your shoulders forward. With that, you can see that your arms will just, if you start swinging your arms are basically disconnected from the torso then. And then go ahead, not necessarily disconnected, but they're relaxed. And then you're going to roll down. You roll your rib cage down, and then you're going to take your pelvis upside down with you. You should be able to be close to the floor, if not touching the floor. If you're not touching, then you can bend your knees and you're going to walk on out. If you don't have to bend your knees, don't. And you're going to walk on out until you get to your plank position. So you've got to be in this neutral line here. Then from there, I just want you to bend your arms as much as you can and then press back on up. And then do that again. This is a sneaky way to get a push-up in, or two. And then, so I don't care if you just bend your elbows an inch, and then you're going to walk your hands back. You're going to go through a pelvic tilt to get your pelvis back on top of your thighs first, then your rib cage. Then once your rib cage is there, slide your shoulder blades down the back of the rib cage, and they're in their upright and locked position, and your head's the last thing to come on up. We're going to do that again. Breathe in, breathe out, and roll on down. So if you notice, my legs stay straight up and down. All right, pull weight over your toes. If you need to bend your knees, bend your knees. Otherwise, you're going to just walk on out to your plank position. Your sternum should be between your thumbs. Should be straight across the front of your hips. You're going to bend your elbows as much as you can and then press it back on up. So if you can't stay at a plank, go down to your knees and then do the same thing of just straightening those elbows. And then go ahead, walk back to your feet, keep weight over your toes, and round your pelvis on up. Rib cage, shoulder blades, head's the last thing to come on up. All right, from here then, you're going to take your center line, and tilt it over to your right leg slightly. Not going to be a really noticeable change. And then you're going to go ahead and lift this foot off, and you're going to give me a swing. So you're going to flex your foot and just swing that leg. So if I lose my balance, I'm going to put this foot down, and then I'm going to go ahead, keep these hips straight across, change that center line, and then just swing it. And try the other leg. All right, so again, I'm just testing balance a little bit, so go ahead and you can just put that heel out in front, flex that foot, lift up through this side, and go ahead and just try to, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to walk a little bit more. I keep on going towards that curled end of the mat, and it's going to throw me off balance. So you're just going to swing, keeping this all steady. Put that foot down, and then we're going to bend, sit back in a squat, curl your tailbone under, and softly land down on your mat. Or not. Okay. But those are the mechanics. So I'm showing you the mechanics. We'll get there, and we'll go in small segments to get to those parts. All right, so now you're going to go ahead and go on to the end of your tailbone. All right? And I'm just going to hold a balance here. I'm going to round through my spine, go to my shoulder blades, and come back on up and hold that balance. So my head can touch. It's just not going to be, it would not be wise to throw yourself back and slam your head into the floor. So you want to round through the spine. This is spinal articulation. Think of a bicycle chain It has all these small links. Each of those links need to work independently and go around that gear, but it's dependent as a whole to power that bike. And that's what your spine's going to do. It's going to break up into those little segments. And then you're going to go ahead here and balance. All right, so I'm going to stay with the balance. Then I'm going to just straighten one leg and bend. Straighten the other leg and bend. Now, I could just do this with the balance, but I really want you to have the abdominal activation. And then you can reach your arms long here. If you need to, you can just hold here. So you pick what is best for your body today. All right, and then you can go rather quickly. So if my core stays steady, I can move these legs rather rapidly. All right, and I'm not staying there long enough for these quads to overreact, nor should these hip flexors be overreacting. If they are, then that means I need more core activation. So now we're going to go ahead and roll down, and we'll get some of that core activation going. So what you're going to do here is you're going to be in an imprint. So lower back is going to be glued on the mat. Back of the neck is long, back of the head is down. Shoulder blades are down, and now stay in that pelvic tilt, and you can go ahead and just lengthen that knee away from you. The lower legs are just relaxed. Relax might be too hard of a word. And then toe goes down, pull it back on up. Bring it down, bring it on up, and down and up. Keep that imprint, keep that navel pulled down. All right, keep it going. And now you can increase that speed if you can keep that lower back glued on the floor. All right, keep it glued, keep the shoulder blades down, and just mobilize. All right. From there, then, you can lengthen your legs on up. I'm still in that imprint. I'm still going to keep that navel pulling down. I'm going to lower those legs. So I don't want you moving your pelvis. I want you just moving the legs away from the body. All right, so it's like a drawbridge going down. Don't take the castle. Keep the front of the neck relaxed. Don't let that chin go up towards the ceiling. And then when you can't hold that lower back on any longer, you bend your knees and start over again. So keep this all compressed. That's that transversus muscle working. Lower those legs, bend the knees, and come back in. So you want to make sure that you're keeping the spine in that nice imprint so that you're protecting the lower back but strengthening the abs. Remember to breathe, don't hold your breath. And this time, we're going to change it on up. We're going to go to the single leg stretch. So you're going to hold on to one leg. You can hold anywhere you want and stretch this leg away. So my shoulder blades are off, and then I change. So if you look, my head is vertical, and I'm keeping that imprint. And blow out every time that leg comes in. Blow air into that leg. So you're keeping that imprint and you're mobilizing the legs again. Remember, those legs are locomotor muscles. They're not postural in nature. They are meant to move. Let me know when you start to feel your abs. Now? Okay, then we'll come on down and we'll rest from that. All right, so we talked about the neck. So I talked about keeping in this neutral position. Now that we've been up there long enough, we probably have created some tension from just holding that vertical position against gravity. So now let's just circle that nose around on the ceiling to relax C1, C2, as it attaches to the spine. And then you're going to reverse it and go the opposite direction with the tip of your nose. All right. Now, what I want you to do is go ahead and lift your head on up. So when you lift your head on up, you can still keep your shoulder blades touching the mat, and your scalene muscles in the front of your throat should be working. Now I want you to interlock those hands, put them behind the head, and drop the weight of the head. So now when I drop the weight of the head into my hands, there's no tension in the neck, correct? Excellent. Then that's what you want to keep, is no tension in the neck. You do not want to be working the neck for this next exercise. You want to work the obliques. And so you're going to go outside of the elbow to outside of the knee and come through center, but you're not going down. You're going to go across, and across. My hips are not going to move. My hips are going to stay steady, and I'm not pulling on my head. I'm just resting my head in my hands. I am rotating from my rib cage. So go ahead and give a breath out every time you go to the side. So let me hear you breathing, so I know you're not holding the breath. So keep those shoulder blades on up, keep that head in a vertical position. You can rest 20 pounds in your hands and just rotate your rib cage. So it's your rib cage that is actually doing the movement from the center, from the core. All right, can you feel that in your abs? Excellent. You can even talk still. That's fantastic. We'll do a few more then. Keep on breathing. Don't hold that breath. And last two, and come on down and rest. And you should feel like that really affected this abdominal cavity. Could you feel those muscles working? Excellent. Good. Let's go on then from that. You're going to hold on to each thigh independently with the hand. You're going to bring your forehead towards your knees, and you're going to move your knees away. So if I'm holding on to my thighs, by moving those legs away so that my toes are just hovering over the mat, my tailbone should be flat on the mat. So you should feel a good, solid part of your tailbone down on the mat. Otherwise, you have no mechanical advantage to do the next part of the exercise, which is to bend your elbows, pull your shoulders up and over your hips, and then you pop up like a jack-in-the-box. And then you're going to roll back down and bring the knees back with you. So this is called the basket. So you're going to go ahead and do that so that you are in a really tight ball position here. Move this far enough away so that it brings your shoulders on up with you. Bend and pull that navel down at the same time to just pop on up. And you're going to feel a stretch across your shoulders and your back to get to that position. If you're not there quite yet, we'll keep on working on it, because there is glory in that effort, because what you're doing is you're getting these muscles prepped for that day when it just will happen for you. So you got to pull this down and pull at the same time with your bicep. Now in real life, the bicep will not substitute for the abdominals. That's why we're doing it in this manner, where the hip flexors can substitute for the abdominals. So we're trying to keep the hip flexors out of the equation. We're going to do the basket 2 more times and we'll move on. Forehead towards the knees. Move it far enough away. Tailbone is flat. Now go ahead. So if you can't get up all the way, just keep on working on it. And then when we come back down, just fold and come back down. So keep on working at it. And forehead towards the knees. Abdominal muscles can be worked every day. They're endurance muscles. They do not wear out with 100 repetitions. We'd be in trouble if they did. And then come on up. All right. And then this time we will stay up. We'll go to a straddle position. All right. Now we're going to move we're going to work on that neck again. So the neck has the ability to flex forward, So chin towards the collarbone without collapsing down. So if you collapse down, you'll be putting pressure on your voice box. So you want to use your Adam's apple to pull back towards the back of the throat and just flex that head forward. All right. Then you're going to bring it back on up to neutral. Now I can look up, but it's going to be like I'm looking up at an angle. If I looked up directly right overhead, again, that puts too much strain here and usually means I collapse back here. So you're going to be looking always at an angle, like where the wall and the ceiling would meet. All right, and then you get to ear to shoulder, and you want to feel that the shoulder blades are down and not up by the ears. Some of us have those kind of stuck in that upward position. And come back to center and go to the other. Does anybody hear crunching or crackling? All right. That means that we might have a little bit of, and go ear to shoulder on the other side again. And then go on the other side. It could be anything from the way you sleep. And now we're going to do half circles. So to do half circles, I'm going to turn towards you so that you can see. You're going to just go ear to shoulder and back. So it has the ability to rotate here and drop down and bring it on up. Notice I'm not going back too far with this. And the neck does have the ability to rotate so that if I was here, I can look over my shoulder and then come back to center and then look over my shoulder and come back to center. Try not to take the shoulders with you like I just did. Try to make it so that it's about the neck. All right. Now, if you round your shoulders forward, where does your head go? Slides forward. This is a syndrome. It's called forward head syndrome. If I pull my shoulder blades up, back, and down, my ear will almost automatically come back over my plumb line. So your shoulders have a great influence over where your head is positioned. So if you do a lot of things in front of you, like work on a keyboard, read a book, eat, drink, watch TV, it's all in front of you, nothing behind you. So for that reason, we're going to put those heels right up from our sits bones. We're going to go ahead and put our fingertips off the side of the mat. I'm going to slide the shoulder blades towards the center of the spine, and then we're going to come on up and lay into those shoulder blades. So the shoulder blades will be right over the same spot that they are. They're just going to be now in a different horizontal position, and we're going to lift our tush on up, and we're going to be straight across the front of the hips. All right? And if you're too tight at your ankles, walk out as half a step and lift that on up. So you should be feeling this in your shoulders and in your glutes, and you feel that your feet are flat on the mat. And come back down. Now, if you have trouble with your shoulder extension, so this feels like you feel it only in your shoulders and you don't feel it in your tush, you could get after the tush by laying on one of the exercise balls and doing the same tabletop, but then that becomes a balance issue. Or you could do it on a footstool, like the one that's almost as tall as the sofa. You can put your shoulders and your head on there and go to the tabletop and lay onto the footstool. So if you have that at home. We unfortunately do not have footstools here for you at the Marsh. Not here in the studio, at least. All right, and come on back down. Can you feel that? So we'll work on those shoulders. So it sounds like maybe we need to work on the shoulders and the range of motion for the shoulders. So what we're going to do here is lay down on the mat in neutral. So that means back of the head, shoulder blades, tailbone, legs are long. We're going to go ahead and raise our arms on up towards the ceiling. Widen your shoulder stance so that you can feel the outside border of the shoulder blade down. So that means that your thumbs will be just to the side of your body line into your shoulders. All right, and then you're going to go ahead, keep these front ribs laced together like a shoelace across the eyelets, and then you're going to lower those arms overhead. All right, so you're going to go to the point that you will feel that you maybe hit your end range. And that might be before you touch the floor on one side, both sides. And then you're going to open on up to a wide V with your palms facing the ceiling. Your fingernails should touch the floor, close to it. By the time you get down to a T, it should touch the floor. You're opening on up through the chest. You're going to bring those hands down towards your thigh bone. Once you get down there, you're going to turn the palms to face your thigh bones and go back on up and try that again. So this is a great position to get external rotation, which is usually where you do all your ball throwing type of activities when you go overhead. But you still have to have the shoulder blades against the rib cage and the rib cage laced together. Open up to a wide V. Slide this down so it's kind of like making the snow angel, making the wings on the snow angel, and then go ahead with the palms facing the thigh and back on up. One more time this direction before we change it. All right, so overhead, keep those, don't let the front ribs flare, keep them under control, open on up. So you want to get the range of motion from the shoulder socket and not from the spine. All right, now we're going to reverse it. You're going to go down towards your thigh bones. Once you reach that, you're going to open the palms on up. You're going to make the wings of the snow angel. And you're going to get to the top of the wing. And this is where you're going to pull the front ribs even a little bit tighter together to get those arms overhead and bring it over your chest. All right, so down. Wing it on up to the top of the tip of the wing, and then pull those front ribs even closer together to go overhead and then back over your chest. One last time this direction. And this should feel pretty good on your shoulders once you get done with it. And go here. Now we are in the perfect position to do our roll-ups. So with the roll-ups, I usually put a little bit of flexion in my ankle to keep the feet underneath me and under control. I want to round my head on up to look at my toes. Then I'm going to go ahead and press with my spine and come rolling back on up, and then go long over my legs. And then from there, I'm going to make the horizontal position with my pelvis first, then my rib cage. Shoulder blades have to sneak back on the back of the rib cage, and then my arms are back on up. All right, do that again. Head on up to look at those toes, round it on up, go long over, no using the floor. All right, so if you need help with this, you could bend so that your heels are on the mat. You have a bend in the knee. You can come on up to this position. As I said, the bicep will not ever substitute in real life for your abdominals. Your hip flexors will. So if you want to pull on that, you can do kind of just like what you did with the basket. Use the back of the thighs and then go long over this. A better fix would be if you have some little handheld weights. Never put them over your dental work. Keep them over your chest. You could hold light weights in your hands and just change your center of gravity so you can go long and roll up in that position. So you can do it a couple different ways of trying to get to that point. But again, if you're not used to doing this deep flexion with your spine, it's not going to automatically just do it the first time you ask it to work like that for you. So you have to get it used to that. It's been in quarantine for too long. All right, so we've got to get it on up and running again. So again, this is a really good way to just get it started, is just give a little bit of tug with using your bicep and then roll up, and we're going to stay on up this time, and then we're going to go to the spine twist. So with the spine twist, in a seated position, your sits bones will stay down on the mat, and you're going to just twist your spine around. Shoulders are going to go with it, but I'm really twisting the spine. I'm moving the rib cage on top of a set pelvis, and then come back to center, and then the other direction, and come back to center, and make sure to breathe out all that air so that you can really, you don't want to have a lot of air in your abdominal cavity when you're trying to twist it. You want to twist and blow all that air out so that it can really move. So when you hold your breath, it just raises your blood pressure and keeps that abdominal cavity as a solid mass. You want it to move, so you want to expire that air and come back. Now we can change it to saw by doing forward flexion with that rotation, and flex forward, come on up, come back to center. And I want this to be so well learned that you do it automatically. So the most common cause of back injuries is forward flexion with rotation, which is exactly what we're doing right now, but that's without doing it correctly. So you want to pull that navel back so you can flex on over on this diagonal, because we work in opposition in most cases when we are doing most of our chores. Breathe out. 2 more. Fold in half and up. You're reaching for that pinky toe. It would be a good goal to go for. All right, and come back to center. Roll the shoulder blades. So again, thinking about that care for the neck. When you go on up here, you can feel that that works these upper traps, especially in the back part and just below the ear and above the shoulder. That's that upper trap. And then if I go ahead and just drop it there, you can see how mobile these shoulder blades can be. Up, change. So I don't have to move my rib cage to move the shoulder blades. So that's what we're doing when we're circling, is we're getting this mobility, but then when I'm going to be the bottom of the pyramid on my cheerleading squat, I've got to make sure that those shoulder blades are down on the rib cage and they're upright and locked position. So again, if I'm here in this seated position, bend your knees slightly so that your legs aren't creating this. But if you go ahead and put your arms back, straight overhead, and you lean forward a little bit, you can feel those shoulder blades acting like a cookie cutter on your back. And they're really pressed up against that. That's where they have the most power, is when you are back here. So that's all that ball handling stuff that's overhead, or their tennis serve. All right, good. Let's go ahead. Let's put our legs together. And then from there, you're going to stay seated on there. You can put your hands here. Now lift your leg up. Lift your right leg off the mat. Just one leg, without leaning back. That's end range for that hip flexor and that quad. It's really hard to do, isn't it? Excellent. Try the other leg. So this is just end range without going and flexing through the spine. All right, so it gets to be pretty tough at end range here. All right, what we're going to do now is flip on over, and we're going to stretch those muscles by doing reciprocal inhibition, which means that I'm going to work the back side of that hip, which is going to be your gluteus maximus. put your hands underneath your hip bones. This causes you to go into a slight little pelvic tilt, which will be protective for that lower back. You're going to pull the navel up higher than your fingers. Keep equal pressure on both palms, which are holding those hip bones. All right, so you've got your hip bones in the palm of your hand. You've got equal pressure across that. We're going to lift our left leg up, and you should still have equal pressure there. And then bring it back down. You're going to do that 4 more times. Just lift, and it only goes to 20 degrees behind, or about maybe 3 to 4 inches off the mat. It depends on the length of your leg. Now we're ready to go to the right leg. So tighten up that tush. So this is an exercise for your tush. All right, can you feel that? You might feel your hamstring as well. Your hamstring is a secondary hip extensor. All right, now what I want you to do is pull that navel on up. Really think of engaging with that navel. Keep long through your lower back and try to pull both feet up high enough to have the toenails leave the floor. So it's just hovering. And feel your tush really working to do that leg extension. You're long through your back, you're not pressurizing your lower back. And then come back down and rest. Could you keep it out of your lower back? If you can't, then stay with the single leg. If you can, then you can go back to 2 legs and you can try lifting it a little higher this time. Keep that navel pulled on up. That navel is not resting down on the mat. You have equal pressure on both hands with your hip bones, and you're just hovering there with those legs. All right, and then come back down. All right, does that get to be tiring? Yes. Should it tire up to 2 times? No, probably not. So we have a little catch up to do. All right, let's take the hands out from underneath the hip bones, and we're going to go to a goal post with the arms. So the palms of the hands are down on the floor. All right, I have my ear to the mat. I have my toenails down, and I'm going to keep my legs down this time. I'm going to press down with my forearms and lift my chest off the mat, and my front ribs will stay down. I am looking down at the mat, so I'm not exaggerating the head movement. I'm looking down. I can see the little squares that make my mat. All right, and then I'm going to go ahead and turn my ear back down and come back down. So this is for the shoulder girdle. So pull the shoulder blades towards the center of the spine, press down with your forearm, and lift your chest on up. And you keep the navel off the mat. So the navel will always be like a steel plate that pulls up towards the spine whenever I do this shoulder extension. All right, then from there, I can try to lift my hands off the floor. Now you have more responsibility because I took the forearm muscles away. And then from there, you can try to straighten the arms, but do not pull the shoulder blades up by the ears. So again, if you drop down, you've disengaged the lats. So you got to pull the lats down in the back waistband and then come back down to that goal post. Bend the arms and come back down. We'll try that again. So go ahead. You come to center. You have your forearms down. You can lift. Then from there you can straighten the arms. And then I want you to lift the right arm a little higher than the left, and then you bring it back down. So you're pressing the shoulder blade into the rib cage. Lift and bring it down, alternating sides. Press it down. Press it down. So here I can work the shoulders in a slightly different range. Again, I'm looking at the squares on my mat. I'm not over-exaggerating the head position. Just shoulder extension, or this actually is considered back extension, but I'm working the shoulders. come down and rest. Tiring for those shoulders? Okay, so everything that's out of sight, out of mind, is now facing the ceiling. So we're trying to get that working. The next exercise is a classic exercise called Superman. So it's like this old Superman TV show. So you would just have your arms and your legs up at the same time. You pull that navel on up. You still have your front ribs down. And you're just enough energy to float those hands above the mat and the toes and the knees above the mat. Long line. And then come down and rest. All right. One more time for that Superman. Lengthen on out. Energy away from the center, but keep the shoulder blades on the rib cage. Keep the glutes active. And come back down and rest. All right, now you can stay down there. Bring your arms back down to a comfortable position about shoulder height. The legs are very close together. You're going to bend your left knee. And you would just lift that thigh up until you get to the hip bone will stay down. All right, navel pulls on up. And then touch that knee back down and lift it back on up. So it's just a very small movement. Touch down, just to go right back on up. Down and up. You should feel this right at the sits bones. Can you feel that in that area? Excellent, good. So it's just a touch. I touch and go. Touch down and go right back on up. Without moving the other side, disrupting the other side. So I'm working this glute on the left side. And you're keeping your navel sewn on that spine to support. And then go ahead and lengthen that leg, bend your right leg, and lift it on up. So you're getting it high enough to clear the knee, but not to take the hip bone off. So you got to stay very close to the other leg. If you find yourself creeping out to the side, that means you're working the glute med, not the glute max. I'm trying to work the center line of that side of the pelvis, the gluteus maximus. And lift it up. Keep that navel sewn on that spine. Keep the pressure out of the lower back. All right, lengthen that leg, and let's roll over on our side. All right, you can use this hand as a pillow, or this arm as a pillow, the whole arm, not just the hand. And then you're going to lengthen your legs on out. So I use the straight edge of my mat to have my straight line. And then I'm going to go ahead and lift it to sitting bone height. I'm going to hold this neutral line. So remember, we did those leg swings standing to work on balance. Now we're going to have to balance down here on the mat, and we'll swing that leg forward, and we'll swing it on back. All right, so now when you swing it back, you should not be arching your lower back. So it's, again, just that 20 degrees behind. So if you swing back, when I go down, I should feel that other foot present right there at the end of that. So I'm only a foot behind, my foot length, and I'm a size 7, so not big. So it's going to be just that small degree, 20 degrees to be exact, behind you that you should go, that works the glute only and does not go into the lower back. And swing it back, and swing it forward, and swing it back, and swing it forward, and swing it back, and swing it forward, and swing it back. All right, now you're going to go ahead and stay there, and you're going to lift it on up. So this is going to work your abductors, so on the outside. So this is your thigh bone right here. It is going to go deeper in that socket until you feel a pinching action, and that tells you to come right back down. So your knee will stay forward, your toenails will stay forward. All right, and you're just going to lift it on up, and up, and up. So again, I'm emphasizing the up because that's the shortening phase. It'll come down on its own, I guarantee. and up, and up. Tell me when you start to feel tired through the outside of that hip. You're tired, okay, great. Now we're gonna stay up there, and now we're gonna rotate it, and then come back to center and come back down. So you're gonna lift it on up. My knee is facing forward, then my knee is gonna go up towards that, but my hip is still gonna stay forward. And then bring it back and come back down. And it's up, rotate, center, and down. So it will not take my pelvis with it. It'll just be that thigh bone. And it's a very small movement. So my knee does not get to face the ceiling. That would be a pretty good range of motion. There might be some of you that have that range. I do not. So I have to work within the constraints of my body. So if you're getting way up here, make sure that it's not because this hip is way behind this other hip. The hips have to be stacked one on top of the other, and this movement is only done at the hip socket right here. All right? This would be spinal rotation if I went here and then back to here, and here, back to here. All right, just to make that clear. Now you're going to put that leg in front here, and we'll be thankful that it gets a rest there, and then the bottom leg will pick on up, and I'll work the adductors, ADD, and they will come across midline. So this leg is out of the way, so this thigh, my hips are still stacked one on top of the other. And lift up, and up, and up, and up. All right, then can you feel that inner thigh? Inner thigh, all right. And then go ahead and lengthen both legs on out. Lift both legs on up. So now my core has to stabilize. So, and against both moving legs. They're going to do small circles, and they're pretty much right underneath me. So if you're looking down, you can maybe see as the toes come through the front part of that circle, but otherwise it disappears from your sight. You're going to try to hold your hips, your rib cage, and your upper body steady, and then reverse it and go the opposite direction. All right, good. Let's go to the other side. So you're going to have to turn around and line yourself on up. Put that arm underneath. All right. And then you're going to go ahead and start sitting bone height, slight flex in the foot, bring it forward, and bring it back. Now, I just like to flex my foot. You could have a pointed foot. The idea is that you just are not going to have the foot flop it around. So it's just to keep your foot under control. But what you have to control even more than your foot is your torso does not move. It is just the leg swinging in the hip socket. All right? And you should be able to feel that I use my hip flexor going forward and my glute going back. Hip flexor going forward, glute back. Forward. And as again, if you just drop it down, you should be right behind that other foot so that it's all within a workable range for that pelvis. So don't try to make it too big or your pelvis will have a hard time controlling it. And last one before we change it to abductor, which is a side leg lift. Side leg lift. So the knee and the toenails are facing forward. Relax your upper body. It's not doing the work except for stabilizing. And it is the thigh moving in the hip socket. And then you're going to stay up there, and you're going to do external rotation and turn it back, come back down, and it's up, rotate, come back to center and down, up, rotate it on out, and back. And if you're doing this correctly, you're going to feel this right at the top of the thigh, right at that hip socket. Can you feel that? And this will make it so that you become aerodynamic at this joint so that it can move that thigh where it needs to be. All right, now you're going to go ahead and rest that leg down, and then you're going to pick that bottom leg on up and work those adductors. So you should be able to get to the top of the thigh bone by lifting it on up. Lift and lift and lift. Now the major job is being done by those adductors. You have to still stabilize with the core. And you're going to lengthen that top leg on out over that bottom leg, and you're going to lift both legs and circle it. Keep that control through the core. And then you're ready to reverse it. All right, and two more, one more, and then let's come on down. Let's go ahead and let's go onto our backs. Okay, I want you to cross one leg over the other. My ankle bone is on the far side, outside my body line. I'm going to really try to open on up through this. Don't force it, but make it so that you're using these muscles to do that. You're not just letting the joint go to the ligament and tendon. And then from there, I want you to go ahead and do your bridge. So you're going to go through a pelvic tilt, and you're going to roll on up. This leg is going to stay in neutral, so right underneath. And you're going to go on up until you get to a straight line across the front of this hip. This hip is in line with this hip, and you can feel this hip just opening on up. And then roll down one vertebrae at a time until you're all the way back to neutral. That means that lower back comes off. So the first move is to pull the navel down, the tailbone tips on up. I'm going to peel off one vertebrae at a time, encourage this leg that is folded on over to open on up as you go, especially up into your high bridge using this glute. You're actually using both glutes to help lift you on up and support that hip girdle. And then roll it back down one vertebrae at a time. One more time. You go through that pelvic tilt, peel off, breathe out. Get up there, hold that, open up this hip, keep these hips facing the ceiling, roll down one vertebrae at a time. And all the way back down to neutral. All right, change legs. So you unfold that leg, put that leg down, take the other leg, make sure that ankle bone is on the far side. Encourage this thigh to open on up. Both hips are still even. You'll have more turnout in one side versus the other. Go through your pelvic tilt and peel off one vertebrae at a time till you're all the way back on up to neutral. And then try to encourage this leg to just open on up. Keep these hips as high on either side. So even though this leg isn't underneath, it's still lifted. And then roll down one vertebrae at a time until you're all the way back down to neutral. Breathe in, breathe out, bridge on up. Encourage that hip to open on up. Encourage those hips to stay in neutral. And go ahead and roll down one vertebrae at a time. And we have one more time to do. Bridge it on up. Hold it there. Go ahead and breathe out as you roll back down. All right, and then unfold that leg. Lengthen those legs, lengthen those arms. Reach out as long as you can. And then relax it. Do it one more time. Reach. And relax. And you guys are done for today.